Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to the 7th episode of 30 chess tricks against Sicilian. In this episode, I'm going to show you one of the modern trick of 2016 against the Accelerated Dragon. The Accelerated Dragon arises after the move order e4, c5, and now black follow up with the move knight to c6 and the move g6. It is very reliable and a safe option, and that's why it is very popular at the club level. Now in this modern world where you have the access of mega database, live book and many other resources which can tell you what your opponent plays, and if you find out that your opponent plays nothing other than Accelerated Dragon, then the trick I'm about to show you, it's worth trying even in the professional tournaments. The setup I'm going to recommend start with the move knight to c3. So the black continue here with the move knight to c6, and now you play the move d3. Black move order continue with the move g6, and now you play the move bishop to e3. And this is something I most like about this trick. The opening variation is very much forceful, and black has to know exactly how he's going to respond to avoid a lot of pitfalls. Now the first point to notice is this bishop is attacking the c5, so the black response is force. Black has to defend that pawn. Now there are three ways black can try to defend this pawn. Amongst them, b6 and knight to d4 gives white a clear-cut advantage, and in fact those moves are hardly played in any professional tournaments. Nevertheless, I have covered those lines in detail in the PGN, which is available in the description. So kindly go through the PGN. Just to give you a highlight, a high rank opponent placed b6 against me. I responded with the move d4. And now after pawn captures, bishop captures, knight to f6, other moves are already covered in the PGN, e5, knight to h5, and now the wonderful move e6. So white is attacking the rook, my opponent captured the bishop. I first of all give him this check, and after king takes, queen captures, it's already a difficult position to play as a black. The problem here is black cannot play the move bishop to g7 because of the simple queen to d5, and black is going to lose rook in the corner, so that's not good. And if knight to f6, which happens in the game, then the simplest is you continue with the move knight to f3, and now some devastation happening on two squares which cannot be avoided. So for example, in this game my opponent continued with the move bishop to g7. I played knight check, and after king to g8 and knight to e6, it's already clear that black is going to lose an exchange. Okay, so let's consider the most obvious response from the black, that is d6. Well, after d6 we are going through the move d4, attacking the pawn one more time. So black has to forcefully capture this pawn. Afterwards we'll take with the bishop. Now kindly note, moves such as f6 will only weaken black king, and in those cases white can always continue with the move knight to f3. So the question is what black can do to defend the rook. Now the obvious move knight to f6 is very bad in this position. The simple reason is after bishop captures and pawn captures, black has some horrible pawn structures which can be exploited later part in the game. So that's not good either. And apart from knight to f6, what are the good options? Well, I'm afraid there are not many. For example, if black plays the move e5, then after the move bishop to e3, it's not clear that what this g6 move is all about, because black can never play the move bishop to g7 as his d6 pawn will become severe weak. So all in all, knight captures d5 is the only serious try by the black in this position. After knight captures and queen captures, once again white is hitting the rook, and black is forced to play knight to f6. The reason e5 is even worse in this situation is here white can exploit this immediately after the move order queen to a4 check. Now let me highlight the problem in the black camp by showing you one of my game where my opponent continued with the move bishop to d7. I responded with the move queen to b3, attacking b7, and after the move order bishop to c6, bishop to c4, attacking the pawn, queen to c7, and now the move knight to d5. That knight is too much dangerous, so it has to be removed. So my opponent captured with the bishop. But after bishop captures, once again black faced the same situation where he cannot place bishop to g7, and in this case even not bishop to e7. On top of everything, his b7 pawns also hang. My opponent continued here with the move rook to b8, but this is a big time mistake. Before I move on, I like you to pause this video and find out what is wrong with this move. Okay, I hope you find this move, that is queen to b5 check. If the king moves, then the black position already collapses. So my opponent continued here with the move queen to d7, but after bishop to f7 check, a deflection move, king to e7, and now the simplest move, queen to b3, and not only white emerged with an extra pawn, but the black king caught in the center. So in other words, here the only reply left for the black is knight to f6. No matter, white will continue with his energetic play with the move e5. So now attacking two spots, and once again black response is force. Black has to accept this pawn. If he try to run away, and this has happened in many games, especially below 2000, where my opponent casually played the move knight to d7, which is outright blunder. Can you find the refutation? Yep, is e6. Very simple, attacking two spots. So the black response is force. Black has to play knight to f6, saving both the thread. But now comes bishop to b5 check, and black is completely busted. So that means force reply over here is pawn captures e5. Afterwards, white has this sneaky move bishop to b5 check. Kindly note, if knight to d7 at this point, then after queen captures e5, rook to b8, and castle on the queen side, it's a big time question where this king will go. So that's not good. And the most obvious move, that is bishop to d7. Afterwards, white will continue with the move queen captures e5. And this is a standard position. By force, almost you reach it. And that is why this is so effective. Now here black has tried few replies, but amongst them the only right move over here is a6. Rest all moves leads to the disaster for the black. Let's see them. Now the first and obvious move black plays over here is bishop to g7, but this is outright mistake because now white can do castle on the queen side. So that bishop is attacked twice, and because that knight is pinned, black has to do something to unpin this knight. The logical reply looks like castle on the king side with support the bishop, but now comes bishop captures, knight captures, and now queen to b5, and black loses the whole piece. And so far I have found so many even higher ranked players has fallen into this. Now it is not simple as it looks because black has some counters, but white will come out from all this. Let me show you what I mean. So one of my opponent, who is around 2100 rated, continued with the move bishop captures c3, and after pawn captures he played the move queen to b6. I responded with the move queen captures d7, and he continued his attack with the move rook to d8. No matter, I continue with the move queen captures e7. My opponent captured the rook, I captured with the king, and now some forced checks happens. So he played queen check, king to e2, queen check, king to f3, queen check, but after queen to e3 blocking the check, white is all set to get out his pieces. My opponent continued with the move queen to a1. I responded with the move g3, and after queen captures and the move knight to e2, white emerged with a piece for 2 pawns, which is more than sufficient winning advantage if you play accurately. Kindly go through the rest of the game from the PGN. The second move black can try over here is bishop to c6. But I think after bishop captures and pawn captures, black has some severe long range problems. And here white should continue with his normal development plan, such as knight to f3, bishop to g7, rook to d1, queen to b6, and now castle on the king side. So white is continuously pressurizing the e7 square, and not only that, there is knight to a4 coming in the mix, and then b3 and c4 will follow. I know you are thinking, what happens if black queen simply captures this pawn? Well, this is a trap where white can play rook to b1, and after queen to c2, rook to b8 check, rook captures and queen captures, king to d7, queen captures, king to d6, and black can hardly survive from this position. Okay, now let's consider the most accurate response by the black, that is a6. After this move, white should certainly capture this bishop, and after queen captures, knight to f3, bishop to g7, and the move rook to d1, black is still facing some severe problems. Now mainly there are three good replies by the black over here, but against each of them, white has some nasty ideas. Now the first response I want to cover is queen to g4. Well, after that, white should certainly castle on the king side. If black castle, then the e7 pawn hangs, and if black plays e6 at this point, then white has this lethal move queen to d6, which stop black to castle on the king side. This is a case of my game against a 1800 rated player, where he continued with the move bishop to f8. I played queen to c7, attacking the pawn, and now that pawn cannot move because of the simple queen to c6 check. My opponent continued here with the move bishop to e7, but after queen captures, rook to d8, rook captures, bishop captures, white has this winning move, knight to e5, and black completely busted. The second queen move black can try over here is queen to c6. Afterwards, I'm recommending that you should castle on the king side. And after the most dangerous reply, knight to h5, attacking the queen, you should continue with the move queen to e3. Now at first sight, this looks very risky because after bishop captures, pawn captures, and the move rook to c8, it looks like white has some weaknesses on the queen side. But after the following continuation, that is rook to d3, it turns out that black has more weaknesses on the king side, and especially the dark squares are tremendously weak. Kindly note, if black plays e6, then g4 is a very strong reply. So one of my game continue here with the move castle on the king side. I responded with the move rook to e1, pressurizing the e7. My opponent responded with the move e6, but after queen to h6, there is a threat of knight to g5. So my opponent defended with the move knight to f6, but after knight to g5, rook to d8, and now rook to h3, it is very clear that it is only white who is doing attacking in such a situation. My opponent continued here with the move queen to b5. His idea is, when I played knight to h7, he responded with a tricky move queen to e5. But after white's next reply, that is queen to c1, black has to forcefully play queen to f5, but then rook to f3 happens, and now there is no way black can save this piece. In the game, he played queen captures, and after pawn captures and knight to h7, black has given up the queen and a pawn for the two pieces, which is never going to be enough compensation. Last but not least, the best reply over here is queen to f5, which I doubt hardly any of your opponent will consider because of the double pawn. But never mind, here white has a stronger reply, that is castle on the king side. Now I like to show you one of my model game in this line, which will give you a very good idea how you can handle such a positions. In this game, my opponent continued with the move queen captures. I recapture with the knight, and now he castle on the king side. I played knight to e4, and now my opponent attacked the c2 pawn with the move rook to c8, and after the move c3, he played rook f to d8. And it's a very natural plan for the black, as that two rooks are posted on open files. But this is exactly white wants. I continue with the move knight to b6, attacking the rook. Rook to b8 is the only reply, but then comes the wonderful move f4. And it turns out that knight cannot move. The simple reason is, let's say if knight to e4, then knight e to d7, and black is going to lose an exchange. So more or less, black is forced to find an alternative, and my opponent indeed find the one. He continue here with the move e6, and after the move g4, he plays his knight on the d5 square. No matter, I continue with the move knight captures, and after rook captures, pawn captures, and the move rook to d1, black has a weak pawn on the d5 square, which can be the target for the rest of the game. Now if your opponent continue here with the move rook to d8, then knight to f3 is a very strong reply. So in the game, my opponent continue here with the move bishop captures, but after pawn captures, rook to d8, white has a simple plan, that is king to f2, and the king march is going to prove very decisive. Now just to illustrate my point, my opponent continue here with the move king to g7, and after king to e3, he played h5, which is in fact a weak move, because after pawn captures, and now the move c4, black has lost a pawn and in fact the game. I hope with this tricky weapon now you can give a shock to many of your tournament opponent. The good point about this trick is the line is very forceful in the opening, and not many Accelerated Dragon player are ready to face it. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment on my video, and I'll meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.
Closing in for the kill, and there he goes, bang, checkmate, and Korchnoi can't believe it. He's shaking the clock. He thinks EventDate's run out of time, but no, he made it.
But to my surprise, I found out that there are some very nasty traps exist, and that start with this move by white, which is bishop to c4.